Welcome to the 12th episode of the Animal Riot Podcast, brought to you by Animal Riot Press, a literary press for books that matter. It's your producer, Katie, here, and this episode has been edited to reflect our new name. If you're new to the Animal Riot community, welcome, and you can find out more about us at animalriotpress.com. Now on to the episode with your host, Brian Birnbaum, and today's guest, Annie Krabbenschmidt.
Host Brian Birnbaum. We're here today with Annie Krabbenschmidt and, of course, our lovely producers, Katie Rainey.
Many people.
Annie is a writer of comedy and now nonfiction. She has a website with a blog and some hilarious videos, including a stand-up video and a painfully accurate short about post-breakup behavior that I just watched like 10 minutes ago. So I was like...
We're all in that mood right now.
Yeah, I was meeting you before you came in.
Sadness.
Yeah, exactly.
I am quite impressed with anyone who can do stand-up. I think it is an unbelievably hard thing to do.
I thought about doing it since I was like 20 years old.
Yeah.
And then it just slowly went down because I was like, I never was going to nut up and do it. You know what I mean?
I do kind of think that like plenty of people can do stand-up. I mean, all it takes is getting up there, right? But I do think that like writers like could do it. I think we are particularly scared of it because we're like careful with our word, like that kind of
interesting.
Yeah, that's what I think. Because I'm still very scared of it, and like I haven't done it in New York yet. I just moved here, but
yeah,
like,
I could tell you were pretty practiced too. Like your lines were just like really,
and that's
like
not great. Like you're not supposed to like people aren't supposed to be like she rehearsed
really?
that. Well, you know.
Maybe it's supposed to seem more casual.
Exactly.
But
Yeah,
I don't know. I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah.
So.
It was definitely like memorize the whole thing. But
Yeah.
ideally you would just be like, this is my bit, and then you can kind of like
You cut off the cuff it and you feel it out.
and then then you can come back to that bit
and do
like,
it
this
again.
Is my joke. But
do it better.
You kind of want to be a little more loose on stage.
Yeah. I can very much relate to that. I think I've actually maybe said this on this podcast before, but I was the kid like in my communications class in college. For our final speech of the year, like I ripped 4 or 5 shots before I went because
Oh my God.
So it didn't work out that well, but it was better than if I had gone sober because I went from being like a robot who could not speak honestly just like coherent sentences without having a panic attack to being like kind of slurring my words but feeling a little better about it.
I was in Durham where I just moved here from, and last year I broke my leg, and it was like this formative experience for me for sure.
Doing what?
Playing soccer. So like 250-pound guy just like landed.
Oh shit! Co-ed soccer?
Yeah, it was like a big was
this the goalie?
No, I was center back. He was the goalie. Yes, it was the goalie.
It was the goalie.
Wow, I was like, yeah, he was the goalie.
Okay, I was about 250 pounds. What can you be playing out there?
But basically, I was like, what else do I have to live for? Like, I'm doing stand-up this summer. And so, but like, I drank too much. I'm a small human, and I drank way too much and like forgot everything. And like, people in North Carolina are so nice that I was like, hobbled on stage on my crutches and like crawled up there. And I was like, wasn't that hilarious? And like, no one laughed.
Oh my God.
They were just like, no, we're so sad for you.
Wait, but I thought you started doing stand-up in high school.
No, I did. But and so I did a little bit in college. As I was saying earlier, college kind of beat out my spark a little bit, made me a little more afraid to do stuff like that.
I'm actually interested in that. Because
what happened?
No, I mean, honestly, college was not the greatest experience for me either.
Yeah.
Even though, like, by the end, it definitely got a lot better.
Yeah, me too.
But yeah, it was pretty tough for me too.
It was. I don't know what it was, but like as soon as I arrived, I was like, I'm a freak. Like just like very. I think it maybe like more of a homogenous campus. Duke's campus is, and like
I went to Maryland, by the way.
Yeah, like
I went to art school. It was like freedom for me after being in the South and in like an all-girls school, and I was just like, I can be weird.
Yeah. And I could not. There's actually, oh my gosh, this anecdote is like too good not to share, but. Like within the first month, I was super homesick. I came from San Francisco, so I was like, who are you people? And I was in this acting class, and I didn't realize that there's classes that people took just to get A's. I thought that like everyone took classes because they wanted to.
Because they liked them or wanted to challenge themselves.
So I was like, what is this class? Why are all these famous basketball players in this class and like soccer players? And we did this exercise one day that was like the teacher asked for someone, and it ended up being me, to be in the center of the room while everyone made judgments based on their appearance.
Wow.
Like, what the
exercise is like look how when you posture yourself a certain way, people make assumptions. And I was like, couldn't you have picked, like, any of the like, I'm clearly the only person who doesn't have friends in this class. Like, couldn't you have picked anyone else? And they put me in the middle, and everyone's like, I was wearing just like a V-neck sweater, and my hair was in a messy bun, and everyone's like uptight, naive, like,
wow,
like I don't, librarian, and I was just like, this is just so inaccurate.
And this is in Durham, right?
Yeah, and this is like in a class.
So at the same time, in the same state, I was at Winston-Salem at the art school at University of North. Yeah, just like being the only female in film school at the time, and just being like suddenly like, I have boyfriends or like even like a couple girlfriends at the time, and like just running amok and being weird. Wow, that's crazy.
And that's actually so interesting because like Duke technically is a liberal campus, but
yeah, that's kind of bullshit though.
Right.
I mean, like, honestly, I would say, like, because College Park is kind of the same deal. It's pretty homogenous as well. It's not as smart as Duke, and like in that sense, like Duke is an expensive school, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Duke is like relatively because colleges are such liberal places in general. I think compared to most colleges, Duke is probably a pretty conservative campus.
And it's also, I like have a lot of questions about the intersection of class and like the freedom of expression, just because, as you guys know from this piece, like the duty to uphold certain femininity and in a certain class is like very high, and so
it's Southern too. It's it's in North Carolina.
Yeah, so it was just like I did not like whatever. The biggest reaction I had to realizing that I was gay was like, I have failed. Like, I have failed as a woman, and so now I need to like. Yeah,
later she's gonna read a part of her essay that she read
teasers
at the dead which she read at the reading series, which isn't done yet, right?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's just a part of it. But anyway, yeah. So you're going to talk a little bit about that. Oh, that whole process. But
when did that thought occur that you felt like you failed as a woman?
Well, so I definitely was like a tomboy, but I went to a small high school, so I was like, people accept me. Like, I just have a place here. And then I got to college within like the first week. It was either like at a party or just like in this group where I was looking at a man, and I was like, no, I'm never going to be in love with you. And like, I just was so crushed. It was such a crushing feeling, which I'm sad to like have to report that, but it's the truth.
Literally last night when we were on with Chris, I was talking about how it is incredible to me. I'm just going to repeat
Chris Gonzalez was in the last episode.
Yeah. Let's pour out some oat milk libations right now.
Chris.
He's alive and well. But anyway, we didn't kill him. Despite
we never know who's coming in and out.
We were just joking earlier that we put up blankets to, for the acoustics, quote unquote, in here, and how our neighbors probably think we're laying out sheets and murdering people. Or Katie actually made a little less dark example of that. We were doing porn, but I prefer murder. But anyway.
Yeah. Why not?
We just went on a tangent there.
Welcome to our podcast. We're 10 minutes in.
These are their stories.
But I will repeat this. It never ceases to amaze me how much, how big of an impact society has on your psyche in terms of coming out and realizing this for yourself. Because I was telling Chris, like, no straight person waits until college to be like, oh, I like the opposite sex. It's just like there's no point where it happened.
Yeah.
Like, you knew. Like if it wasn't for, like, there's no other factor than society's.
Right.
And
I'll take it one step further and say too that like what it was not me seeing a woman and thinking, oh, I'm attracted to her. It was more like, I'm not attracted to any of you men. And it was much more about breaking that society, like, it's inside me, and realizing, like, in retrospect, of course I'm gay. Like, looking back, it makes total sense. But having to first, like, negate whatever it was that was being forced on me, and being like, well, now I got to address this and figure out what I'm going to do about it.
So had you allowed yourself to feel attraction to women before that point,
no.
or was it only a negative realization?
No.
It was
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It was like I didn't even register that that's what was happening. I was just like, we're good friends. Like and it was truly like deep inside. It wasn't like I have feelings for her, but we're such good friends. It was just like, no, it's because we're best friends. Like it was deep in there. And so like the funny thing about repression and like coming out of it is like it's such a moment of clarity. As if you always knew it, but you did it. It's mind-boggling to me how the brain works like that.
Yeah.
That's honestly like what you just said. I've never articulated, but I tend to refrain from identifying as anything. I called myself bisexual for a while, and like we kind of talked about this in the last episode.
I'm having deja vu right now. This is great.
I love this conversation. We talked a little bit about like pansexual with Chris versus bisexual, and I just tend to be a little bit more fluid, just in general.
Yeah.
Like I've had partners of different everything, of different genders. And we were talking last night with Chris about that. And what you just said about never really realizing that you were sexually attracted to a woman, it was just like, we're really good friends. Like, that was my first inkling honestly, with my best friends, is I was just like, I like am just so close to you.
Right.
That's so strange though, because like I would never be able to make the connection. I don't know how I would have been able to make the connection, because it's hard for me not to feel the same way with my best friends from back home.
Well, that's why
I feel so close to them.
Right.
You know what I mean? But like, I'm not attracted to them. So it's hard for me to understand how you go from A to B, because you say you saw like, oh, I'm definitely not attracted to men. Like I can see that now.
Right.
But
I don't know. I get where you're coming from. I think it's a little bit different if you're female, honestly.
Yeah.
Well,
that's what I'm trying to understand.
But I also think that like what you're articulating is the challenge, where it was like, you felt really close, but you're like, no. And I felt really close, and I was like, no, until one day I was like, yeah, that's what's happening.
But what's stop? So like, that's my question, is like, what's stopping me from then hypothesizing that society is making me repress myself, that maybe I am into men too?
Maybe you should explore that a little
You know what
bit.
I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I've thought about it in depth, and like, it doesn't, I still don't get those feelings, but like, I never will really truly know, because I feel like unless I was born into a society that like, because I like, was it the Kinsey scale? Is that the right one?
Yep.
I
think that's right.
Kinsey scale? I don't know what that is.
Oh, you don't know what the Kinsey scale is?
I think it's like the queer scale.
Yeah, it's like how gay or straight are you? And like, we're all kind of on the continuum.
I've never heard of that.
Like I feel like I'm way on the straight side, but like, who knows? Like, who knows how much I slide, and who knows how much of like deep down or subconsciously, it's like, no, you're just never gonna let yourself feel that little part.
Oh,
you know
and I
mean?
also like, I identify as gay, but like, I'm also wonder how much of that is like, I the closest, like the next best label for me besides straight was that I was a gay woman. Like who knows if I'm actually a lot more fluid than that, but I'm like, I need to attach myself to this.
Yeah.
I don't think that I'm maybe I'm not, I don't know. Who knows? Like you're saying.
Yeah.
I still struggle a lot, and not in a bad way, in a good way, with trying to unlearn some of the rules of sexuality. So I'm still like, I'm good with the label, and I've been good with the label for 6 years since I came out. And then only this summer, and I'm 25 for God's sake, but my therapist was like, are you cool with liking girls? Like, is that actually okay with you? And I was just like, I don't even know. Like, the actual
That's the correct
sexual
answer, though.
attraction to it continued to make me nervous. And so like, it's really only recently that I'm actively like unlearning that part that is the actual like sex and intimacy part of this whole situation.
I can imagine, and one of our talking points is to talk about your breakup. But no, but I can imagine that it makes a breakup that much harder, because when you don't know, when you feel so insecure about something and you just come out of your shell, then it's like, oh, I have to go through this all over again. Like, and one of the funniest parts of that video I saw was like, you're stretching like you're gonna go on a run, and she goes like, I just feel like I'm the only gay person in this city, and then it focuses in on the Golden Gate Bridge. I'm just like, that's fucking perfect.
Yeah. Well, but the funny thing is, like, that was such a real thought I had, was like, I am alone in this world.
It feels like that.
Yeah,
and straight people feel like that after a breakup, but I feel like it's only magnified. I mean, I feel like statistically there's probably less bi or gay people. Maybe that's not really true, and that's a societal adjustment, but like, for, argument's sake. So there is like, so you deal with like how late you had to cope with all that, and then like it's your first experiences, and I mean, I had my first serious relationship when I was in my mid-20s, and so it was like, I was like, oh shit, I feel like a 16-year-old teenager now when I broke up,
And I was so proud of myself in high school, because I was like, I'm not like you girls, like wasting your lives because you're hurt by some dude. And then as soon as I fell in love, I was like, oh, love tummy, like I get it now, like being so stupid. I'm just like everyone else. I never felt more like a girl than when I was falling in love.
I think that's the cutest thing that, other than fluffle, that's been said on this podcast. We learned what a fluffle was. But yeah, love tummy. That might be the name of this episode, is love tummy.
Yeah, it's better than lovesick. I like love tummy.
What's a fluff?
A fluffle is a group of rabbits.
Yeah.
Oh, that is adorable.
Right?
There's like there was like a shit ton of of words. And I was kind
like
of upset.
a Warren,
a Brood, all this shit.
Stick with Fluffle.
No, Brood is hens.
Oh yeah, well the Brood was hens.
We like
right?
Fluffle.
I like all those words. Murder of crows, that kind of
Murder
thing.
of crows is great. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wait, so I just want to give a tiny bit of context since I know we're very far in, but just
Who am I?
Who are you, Annie? I met you through our friend Mary, our mutual friend, who you're in a writing group with in
I love her.
Brooklyn or Queens or wherever you guys. Yeah.
Oh yeah, where do you live, by the way?
I'm in Manhattan. Yeah.
You're in Manhattan?
Yeah.
Which part?
In the Village.
In the Village.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I'm currently living in my sister's apartment. So.
Oh, and you just moved to New York?
Yeah, like 5 months. Oh, 6 months anniversary is on Friday.
Yeah. And still showed up to her reading with like an entourage.
Yeah. And you had your very first reading ever just in New York. Ever. Back in, was this February? No.
February 10th.
First
February
reader
10th.
of the night too?
Yep.
Or were you second? You were
Yeah,
first?
she opened the night and fucking killed it.
Yeah,
like,
that
you
was
never
great.
see a first reader read like that. We were just like, holy shit, who is this person? And I just happened to I love Mary so much. She was like, hey, my friend Annie in my writing group's really great. I'm going to introduce you. And I was like, yeah, anybody, send her over. I love Mary. And so I knew next to nothing about you.
Like,
other
no
than
one knows anything about
Yeah,
me.
other than some things I found on the internet. And I was like, oh, she writes some cool, like very like real and honest things. I like it, like whatever she reads is going to be cool. And then you just fucking slayed it.
It's so funny. I've never had quite this strong of an experience where you were reading the intro to me and I was like, Mary, this isn't me. Like, I just was so convinced that you were not talking about me. So I was like,
oh, that's cute.
Where is this coming from? She's got it wrong.
Yeah, we like our little sweet personal bios.
They're very cute.
We like to make our writers feel,
I mean,
because
them
it is.
yeah.
It is. We're trying to make a community and everything. And then you just, you killed it and you brought an entourage and we were just like, man, you got to get on this podcast with us. Come talk to us. Yeah. And then we stalked you a little bit.
The thing that struck me about your writing is that, I feel like the people that write the least like you make you the most jealous,
Interesting.
So like I write like the way you write it's just so clear and honest and from the heart, while it's like it makes me feel like I'm just writing abstract turgid bullshit. You know what I mean?
Interesting.
But,
I would probably read your work and be jealous because I'm like, can I get that abstraction in there?
You do cut quite to the
wouldn't go
core,
that far.
and it's always like very. It's very funny, but it's also very vulnerable, and I think that's probably what makes you a really good stand-up comedian as well, right? Like I think that's also, I don't think anybody can stand up and do stand up. Mm-hmm. I do not think that at all. No. Just as everybody can't write. I think
I would have to be on serious drugs. Yeah. And I would do it, but like it's not sustainable, right? My life would quickly devolve.
Yeah, and it's funny also, my vulnerabilities also made me like the target of a lot of sadness in my life, but I like maintain that it's gotta be worth it.
That's where comedy comes from.
Yeah, I just feel like I gotta keep doing it.
Yeah, all comedians are sad sacks. Yeah. Like that's like writers and comedians are pretty similar. Totally. I just think that comedians take themselves less seriously, which is kind of way more endearing. My opinion.
So do you have plans to do some stand up in New York?
I would like to figure out like where are you can't just like roll up to the Comedy Cellar, so like where are the open mics that people are doing?
Judd Apatow he did that last time I was there a couple years ago.
Really? He's not known for his stand up.
Yeah, it was actually really good.
That's cool. He's a smart guy.
I don't know if you've seen his Netflix special.
No, I haven't.
Was really good. But so what are you trying to do stand up wise?
Oh, stand up wise, I'm just trying to get up there. I feel like every time I get up is a success. My last night in Durham, I was like, I'm really gonna do it. I think I probably felt liberated by the fact that I was gonna be driving away tomorrow, but did a set and it was just like, it's so fun. And this is one of the things about writing too, is that I have artist friends I have one friend that I can think of who is very just like, I don't give a shit about anyone. I'm just here to make the music. And I'm like good for you. And she wants me to have that feeling. But so much of my either writing or comedy or like even my work that I hope to be pursuing in the next couple months is actually, I think, more about communicating. So for her, I think it's about expression and like letting that expression fly. And for me, I'm like always trying to touch, like reach with people, like
you always have your audience in mind.
I don't know if I always have my audience in mind, but it makes me so happy to connect with people through writing. So like people being like, I was sad, then I read this and I felt that you knew what that was like, and I was like, that is the most. I mean, I'm sure that's the most gratifying thing for any writer to hear. Yeah. But I am so interested in making people feel or like making people feel less alone or making people feel more vulnerable. And so
understood.
It's like, she's just like, why do you care what people think about your writing? I'm like, the whole point is that like I want to connect with people. Like, I'm just trying to talk to people. So
that's great.
I mean, that's, I think, why we do.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, that's why we started the reading series, and then now the publishing company. 100%.
Yeah.
You were telling us a little bit about like what you write and everything, and we started to talk about like what you felt licensed to write about. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I feel like let me start by giving you the origin story of me as a writer, because it was not too long ago. I've always been very creative and kind of like taken on projects that end up becoming writing projects, but I was not the kid who was in the corner scrawling in a notebook. I was not bookish. I was not in that kind of traditional, what we think of as like the writer's origin story. And I did the stand-up routine in high school, and I was like, I could do this. And then I went to college, and I was like, I can't do this. And then
because of certain experiences, or
just like
just
the comedy scene was a bros club for sure.
Yeah,
It was like, you're not picking up what I'm putting down.
Yeah,
and
like the lacrosse team is there or something like that. Yeah.
I will say the very first time I got up in front of my storytelling class in New York, it was like my first week moving here, and like even my asides that were funny in California like became funny again for the first time in 6 years.
Yeah,
and I was like,
yeah.
oh, I'm back with
your
with
crowd.
culture.
Yeah.
Really? Oh, sorry. Was that a throwdown? Hey,
what did you
back with culture.
Back with culture.
You know, as born and bred in the South and having put my time in North Carolina,
I didn't say it. You said
that. I did say it.
I'll say all I see, and this is terrible. All I see when I think of Duke is like a long sleeve crew neck, like, you know, like polo shirt with like the blue and white stripes.
You're
like,
right,
you know,
that's
like all I envision.
Yeah,
but
like some weird yacht club in the middle of nowhere. And
also Coach K's like moly face.
Yeah,
just
and
like,
why,
just like,
guys, stop. Basketball, not a big deal. Like, let's. I just don't understand.
Oh my God.
Don't say to this one.
Yeah, actually, I love sports, but that's like I can really relate to you on like when you were talking about how you don't have the typical bookish writer origin story. I'm the same way.
Yeah,
I was like a jock in high school.
Right, me too.
And like I kind of lived in those two worlds because I felt kind of weird, but at the same time, like I was a part of it. And,
yeah.
you know, but I always had I always felt a little bit like I was bestriding the line. You know what I mean?
I was a jock, but I was also in photography class. Like,
what'd you play?
Taking pictures. What?
What'd you play?
Soccer.
Oh,
soccer. That's right. Yeah.
I'm just
For
guessing.
a second, I thought, like, what photography did I play? And I was like, I don't know. I played soccer and tennis.
So, did we say that on the air that you had broken your leg before?
Yeah. Yes.
That was on the okay.
Yeah.
God,
it was on the air. It's captured.
I've had half a glass of wine. So
it's okay. But I like was in my part-time in the photo lab taking pictures of like truly taking pictures of Barbie dolls hanging by ropes, and people were like,
oh my God, I love this.
Like, you were like, I was such a jock who was just like this. I wasn't like loud and jovial. But I was just like that jock character. And then I was in the dark room being like manipulating these
I would have had
so that
such a crush on you in high school. Seriously.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, you're like my emo teenage dream. Like cut off Barbie doll heads and hang them from a string.
Katie, I just went back to a collage of episodes that we just put out as one episode from
cool.
Arkansas.
Cool.
We talked to Gangy on one of them. And
my grandmother.
And the night before, she showed me like all the doll houses they made and stuff like that. It was so great. And like they used to be like hooked up with lights and stuff, right?
That was like, my Morty mouse.
Yeah. Oh, she's getting so embarrassed.
He's my little wooden mouse that my grandmother made. Anyway, I don't know. Brian reads. I have all my journals from like I've been writing in journals since I was like 6 years old, and I have them all in a trunk in there. And I have my high school one out because I bring it in with my high schoolers I teach because they find it infinitely funny.
Cool.
And Brian, when he's sad, will read it when I'm not here because it makes him feel better.
Oh, I've done that like once.
Yeah.
It made him feel better when he was depressed one day.
Yeah, it was really
Don't
sad.
you love to hear that?
I'm like, great. My teenage like scrawlings made you feel better.
Yeah.
That's good.
But basically, like, I didn't think of it as distinctly like either that I was going to be a professional creative or that I was going to write. And I took a composing class that I think they teach you to get you good at like essay application writing, like how to write a personal essay. And I loved this story I wrote about my mom about how much she loved to make snack baskets and how like it was elaborate. And so it was in our like high school literary mag, and everyone's like, this was fun. I was like, I just had a fun time doing it, so I didn't think about it. But got to college, wanted to write comedy television in the vein of Tina Fey, just because like
because who doesn't?
She spoke to me. Yeah, exactly. Kind of that like I'm a loser, outsider, but like still cool kind of thing. And then I was like, no, I can't do this. This is like either too selfish or I'm not really sure what was happening, but I never pursued writing in that way. And every time you take a college writing class too, it's just like so soul crushing to like, I don't know, something. I don't think I would have enjoyed any like Duke writing class or like writing major.
And so obviously you never got an MFA.
Yeah, I never did that. Didn't know. I never got an MFA. And then, I didn't love when people kind of went all in on those things because I was just like, I'm only moderately either talented or like I still want to live I don't know. It was just something about an environment where expertise is really valued that I was like, I don't want to be an expert in anything. Like I just like want to do stuff and then express myself maybe. Went back to grad school. Weird choice to go back to Duke, but I did. And
really?
Wow.
Yeah, after a year off in San Francisco, I had the best spring of my life.
Whoa,
and then,
that's so strange.
And then I went back and I was like, no, bad idea. It was like stark. And
did you finish?
Did I finish my master's? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did.
What was it in?
Public policy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Wow.
Yeah. So more related to the job I'm hoping to start coming up in the next month at the Trevor Project.
Good, you said it.
Yeah. Well, it's in limbo right now, but I should be starting that.
It's
soon.
not definite. Don't put a copyright
on it.
It
is definite that I have the offer.
It's definite.
Not definite. Who knows? Yeah.
It might be definite.
Yeah.
What is definite?
What is definite? Yeah.
That's exciting though. Trevor Project's awesome.
Yeah. Like I knew I kind of wanted to straddle this, like I want to do something good in the world. And I was sitting at a lunch my like last week of senior year of college with my mentor, and he was like, "Why do you carry a notebook around?" And I was just like, "What are you talking about? Don't at me with my writing tendencies." And then I went back to grad school, had lunch with him again, and he was just like, Are you gonna start owning this identity as a writer or what? And I was just like, oh, like
I love that.
Yeah, and he started giving me books and wrote me notes that were like, lift your voice, like, we got to do it. And so I started off slow. This is about 1.5 years ago. My official writing career began. And he, like, was very encouraging. And the first piece, I was like, this is the best thing I'll ever write because it was the first thing I ever wrote. And then he was like, it's not, like, you need to work on it, but this is a good start. And then my writing has gotten so much better just because I started journaling every night and just getting those reps in and getting the words down. And I don't know, I have a lot to say about journaling and how good it is for you.
Same. Yeah. Yes. That's basically what I teach in my creative writing classes.
Yeah, so important. And then to answer your question that you asked in the first place was basically that I kind of came at this like, well, I should write because I have experience as a gay person and I didn't hear those experiences as a gay before I came out. So I better start doing it. And I better start sharing my ideas here that definitely I know most people, like 90% of the population won't have just by virtue of the fact that like 90% of the population is not lesbians. So
90% of the population is not lesbians.
That sounds right.
That sounds like a title of this episode.
I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna say that's in the census.
We're Googling it right now.
Yeah. Well, we were talking about fluidity, so I was like, well, I can't say that 90% of the population is straight because that just can't be right. So I decided to be more specific. And so I wrote a couple pieces about like me not realizing that I had lost my virginity when I did because I had never had penetrative sex. Sorry, Mom. It's that I said sex. Sorry. I don't need to apologize.
Is she going to listen to this? And is she going to get upset?
No, but then it sounded like I was saying sorry that I didn't fulfill my duty to have penetrative sex. What I meant was I'm sorry that I said sex on the podcast.
Sex.
Sex and sex. But just that realization, like, I didn't know enough about my body or about female pleasure, and like all of a sudden someone's like, no, we've been having sex this whole time, and I was like, oh, my bad. And
that's crazy.
Oh yeah. Totally.
So what did you expect sex to be with another woman? If you expected it, you just didn't know. You just don't know. It's just
this is racy, but
no, that's great. That's why we're here.
This is the juicy stuff.
We have the parental
advisory. It was actually
sticker.
Like,
not safe for work.
The first time that we did oral sex, I was like, so that was, and you did, that was the big moment. And she was like, no, we've been having sex for months.
So before that, it was just like hands. And
sure,
stuff.
Get
right.
the hands in there.
But it's still, yeah.
Get the hands in
there. Get the hands.
Yeah. But I didn't think of it as like, oh, because I'm experiencing like this large degree of pleasure, it's a sexual experience. But that is what sex is. So
yeah.
There's a lot to learn. So anyway, I started off writing about that and being like, I have a license to write about this because I know that so many people are not talking about it, which is why this piece, which is about my mom and my grandpa and my family, I did sneak some gender and sexuality in there, which I couldn't help, but it felt a lot scarier because I was like, who am I to write a sentimental piece about my mom and my dying grandfather, basically? Yeah, like what gives me the right to do that when everyone has? I don't know. It's like the exact opposite reason of how you should, like, it's the exact opposite approach that you should have to writing, which is where I was like putting pressure on myself to write an authoritative document about queerness and thought that was okay. But then when it was like, try writing about this feel like a very familiar relationship that you have, I was like, I don't know, I think it's my perfectionism in me, which is that if I'm going to write about something that most people have experienced, aka having moms and having grandfathers, I better do it really, really well. So it's not a healthy attitude to have, but I was like, if you're going to do something like that, it's going to be the best ever essay about moms, which is like ridiculous because we have so many great stories about moms out there.
Interesting. I had expected you to say you were just nervous about what your mom was going to think.
I am still nervous about that.
Yeah, sure, but
Has
it sounds like...
Has she read your writing?
She's read my writing. No.
Oh, she's not?
Oh, she's read one essay that I've written. Yeah, my parents, like, my whole family's just like, we don't really know what she does, like, in New York. And
fair enough, same.
Yeah.
I'm in the same boat.
And so I'm nervous only, like, I do think that I tried to make this a love letter to my mom, basically, but I think that she, like myself, maybe has a tendency to focus on the negative. So, like, she's just going to hear, I have resents.
Wow.
So she hasn't read this piece?
No.
I'll tell you.
It's not published anywhere yet, right?
No, she's still working on it.
It will be.
It's funny. It's funny you say that because I have an essay about my time in psychoanalysis.
Yeah.
And my parents are both deaf. And it was tough. Like, you know, it's been out for a couple of years now. But yeah, it was the same thing. It was a lot of it is supposed to be about like how like repairing my relationship with my mom and how much better it's gotten and all that stuff.
Right.
And then fairly recently, it was difficult. We had to
talk about the piece.
We had to talk about it a little bit because she heard some comments from friends and stuff like that and got really upset. And it's unfortunate that people have to be so shitty sometimes and they focus on the negative and it gets other people to focus on the negative.
It was really people who weren't focusing on what the piece was actually saying, but they were focusing on the gossip of the piece.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah. Or the buzzy, like the buzzy negative stuff. And like, yeah, no, I know exactly how that feels. It's really tough.
No, if they were to actually like critically read the piece, they'd be like, oh, this is actually beautiful and he's connecting with his mother in a really beautiful way and like really thinks about their relationship in probably ways that like people wish their children actually thought about them.
Yeah,
you know?
And it comes down to the fact that everyone has dark aspects to their relationships, even the best of them. So like it's just whether you want to say it out loud or not. And I don't have a problem with doing that. And other people seem very very ready to take advantage of that, you know.
Yeah, and I definitely like never ever want to. I try really hard in my writing to always like make myself the biggest demon in the writing. Like I really
the villain.
Like I'm the villain in most of my writing just because like I want to be very honest about how I've misunderstood things.
Let's at least say the anti-hero.
I'm the anti-hero, yeah.
It's fun being the anti-hero.
Yeah. But I have a very hard time writing from a place of like I need to call this person out or anything like that. So a lot of this is like my misunderstanding of my mom and like overcoming that basically.
Well, I think that's very like both noble and vulnerable, but I also have this question, like I have been really struggling this with myself. I've written an entire novel that Brian actually just recently edited and read and that I'm sitting on for a while before I go back to, that deals with it's got a lot of autofiction in a way. You know, it's primarily fiction, but there are a lot of like elements of truth into it. And it's been a lot of me exploring that relationship with my parents that was particularly bad growing up.
Right.
And so, I mean, I struggle with that question a lot. And I think that's a huge question in just like the literary community in general is like, what do you have license to write about? And like, I know that typically that phrase comes around like, writing from an identity that's not yours, which, you know, has its own, you know, pros and cons for a lot of reasons. But I think that's a really interesting question of you're just thinking about like actually people you're really close to, like your mother. And so what do you have license to write about? And I don't know, I guess, what do you think about that? What do you both think about that?
And also, and just that and like the idea of you feel like you have license to write about queerness because you are queer. How do you feel if someone who isn't queer writes about that? Or even if it's like in fiction, which actually I did in my novel coming out. Like I don't know if I'd say Julia is queer, but she definitely starts a relationship with another, like, you know, young woman, and so she's interested. I don't know what I'd identify her as, but like I'm straight, I'm a man. Like, you know. Yeah,
I guess it's all about how you do it, is what you said earlier, and like, and I definitely I've not thought about the fiction component of what you're asking right now, but license to write about my mom, I feel like she's like one of the only people in my getting on tough territory here, but like because I love her so much and we actually have such a great relationship, I actually feel better about writing about it because I know that it comes from a place of me trying really, really hard to honor her. And there are plenty of people that I feel like I don't want to go down that road in case it becomes something that's like not honoring and it's more of a ragging on them kind of thing. Whereas like my mom, I just have so much respect for her and so much love for her, and I'm actually like so sad that I have these moments of like, Mom, like, why you do that? And it's not her fault, and it's just, and moms do that to us. So I feel like I feel more comfortable with her more so than other people that I'm close to, just because I know that it comes from a place of like of huge respect for her.
I really admire people who write about people who are close to them, and those people who don't get upset but actually see the like value and the amount of like work and thought. If somebody wrote about me, and even if they wrote about like maybe really hard parts of our relationship, or fuck, Brian, you've written about me and like things that we've gone through, like even on your blog and stuff like that, and like I never read it and got upset or offended. I was
That's
like,
I haven't published that takedown essay.
Yes,
it's coming out in, you know, the Rumpus or something
Perez
soon.
Hilton.
Perez Hilton. Like Brian Birnbaum.
Which host of the podcast?
I would love that. But no, you've written about some vulnerable like conversations and stuff that we have had in our blog, and I have never.
The first one that comes up is we had a discussion about
Brett Kavanaugh
hearings.
Yeah, I remember that, and you wrote about that, and I never like. It was a tense moment for us because we had a disagreement on it. I mean, obviously, like
we basically agreed. We
had
got
the same agreement.
Let's get that out there.
No, I'm sorry. Brian is not.
It wasn't. I wanted Kavanaugh to be, nominated, or like it wasn't.
Yeah,
that.
let's clarify that.
It was a lot more. It was a lot more nuanced than that. Yeah.
No, it was just more about like call out culture and things like that.
Yeah, exactly.
And, like,
I was kind of more on the side of just like. I don't like the whole pageantry and charading of like, of just getting like mass public opinion. I just think it makes everything worse. And like, I'm not ready to just like call everything as I see it without like, whatever. I just think like it's more important to focus on what we can change. That's all, And
at the same side as like someone who has been sexually assaulted myself and like watching that and like talking about we had this whole conversation anyway. It was a whole lot. Anyway, Brian wrote about it in his blog, and like he gives it to me to edit, and like I'm just reading through that, and like I didn't even think twice about it. I was just like, actually no, like you're really thinking about our conversation, and you went really in depth, and even though I was hurt in the moment because I felt misunderstood, I see here where you're really actually trying to explore what happened.
And I am like, I'm sensitive to what my mom would think about this, because I'm like, I have a tendency to focus on the negative. So like I might be worried about the fact that I raised someone and all they remembered was that I made them go to yacht club party. Like
that's essentially what happened of like a couple of weeks ago with my mom. Like just because of what some other people said, it just like put her in that place. And it was really distressing for me because I was like, oh my God, like I really worked my ass off on this essay, and like no one else is reading it like that. Like no one's coming away from this essay except for some reason, like some of her, I don't know. It was strange. It was strange. But yeah.
One person.
One person. My mom said there was like another friend who like made a comment or something. And when you're the center of it, like obviously like certain things can tip you in a way that's not even how they meant it or something. Right. I wasn't there. No, I just remember getting like all these texts, and like I was like, oh my God, like it's what's going on?
And I also am trying, like, the more I'm in therapy, obviously, and
we're
all in therapy. Yeah. The more I try really hard to like allow imperfection in myself, the more I can allow it in other people. It's just this whole thing where the more like I can let my mom go on these things because I'm like, oh, but like people can't be perfect, and the more I'm letting myself be imperfect, the more I guess that actually the reverse is more true, where it was like was sometimes holding people up to a perfection standard, but I think it's because it came from a place of like I need to be perfect, and so like that's why I think it's a standard. And so the more I can kind of like let that go, the more I just feel like I can let people be flawed, and so,
I can relate to that like 120%.
So I'm hoping one day I could read an essay about myself, if someone should.
Yeah,
I'm available for subject matter.
If you get famous enough, you can just write it about yourself, right. In Kanye style or something.
Well, we've been talking about it so much.
Should we? Are we
should
there
I read
yet?
it?
What are we at right now?
We're at 45 minutes.
45? Yeah, let's do it. Then we can talk a little bit more after that, too.
It's time.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
I'm just going to intro it.
Sure.
Yeah.
You're going to read your essay, which has not been published.
No,
and
it's not done.
It's not finished. Do you imagine it being part of a larger work?
I have to be completely honest. I have no idea. Brian, you said afterwards, you're like, it's going to get published. And I was like, I hadn't even thought about it.
That's the way to go.
Yeah, it's part of, like, the actual essay is twice as long as this, and it has a lot more of, like, talking about place and talking about politics a little bit and talking about the irony of like this town is a conservative town and the irony of me liking it so much as a kid, and like then talking about class a little bit. It actually is a little bit too wordy, I would say. So if I'm being completely honest, you two as my witness, like I would love to write a memoir like this longer and just keep on going with it, but how dare I?
No, I think that's horseshit. Like we've already heard in the 45 minutes that we've been with you on this podcast, enough for a memoir. Like more than enough. Just and from what little I know about you, from the amount that I know about this piece and what you're about to read, like yeah, it's a memoir in the making.
I think the word memoir has started to take on this largeness. Whereas, like, I don't even know, like, it's almost like at this point we should just stop calling it maybe that for young people or something, where it's just like, yeah, I'm just going to write this thing about my life. Because a memoir, it has this connotation where it's like, oh, I'm old and wizened and like, now I have all of this sageness that I'm just going to spill out onto the pages.
What's the nonfiction equivalent to like a novella?
Ooh, it's a really good essay.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
But a novella is
collection
way
of
longer.
essays.
Yeah.
I don't know, because a memoir can be short too. I just think it's almost like we need another word.
I'd love to write a series of short memoirs. That'd be really fun.
Short memoirs.
Yeah.
Short memoirs.
Like 90-page memoirs. That'd be really exciting.
Yeah.
Well, you know some publishers.
Clearly. You guys will be my first call.
You heard it here.
Uh-oh.
There's a lot of looks being exchanged
at the table right now. We have a conversation to have after this.
Yeah, we're gonna have a little conversation with you after that. But before.
Yeah, I just think that like some people do it for the art. Like Mary Carr does it because that's her art form. Like people equate memoir with the tell-all or the I had an experience, so let me tell you about it. But some people want to write in that way and just like, or David Sedaris is kind of a memoirist. Like he's an essayist, but he's a memoirist in a way.
It's like you have to justify it for some reason.
Which sucks.
Which is like, I that's why I almost think there needs to be another word, but yeah.
Totally. I think there should be too.
Yeah. Oh well. But yeah, so do you have a title for this yet, or is it
There's a title. It's called Apple Cider Donuts.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I
remember that. I didn't know if that was just going to be the title, because like you did come back to it in this.
Yeah.
But like I didn't know if it was
somewhere.
just
Yeah, and it's called that because you'll find out, but like every time I had an apple cider donut this last couple years, I'd be like, this reminds me of this story, and so I would go into this whole thing, and that's why it's called that. It's like an inside joke. Yeah, I can read it. Just say the word.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
Okay. Home was not a place for burping. In Marin County, California, a suburb of San Francisco, the mere suggestion of impolite bodily noises was met with scorn. During the year, I attended a private K-8 school with an immaculate exterior, painted white and lined with navy. The school was so pristine that even its attendees appeared to be part of the design scheme, as we walked in two evenly spaced parallel lines from one class to the next, our white-collared shirts tucked in, our hands behind our backs, and our socks never ever falling below our ankles. The weekends offered me no respite. My parents' social calendar kept my older sister and me busy at yacht club functions and dinner parties. We took elaborate vacations to European cities where we would get dressed up and dine in the world's best restaurants. My innocence spoiled too early when my mom would give the American translation for escargot one bite too late. It was on these trips that I have the earliest memories of disgruntlement. Even dressed in complimentary patterns, I found a way to ruin almost every family photo with a grimace and an expression I hoped would convey that I was dead inside. I longed to be back in my preferred vacation spot at Noni and Pop's in Somers, Connecticut, accompanying Pop as he ran errands that seemed exotic to me, like going to the dump, and getting lost in his elaborate stories. Driving around in a Hunter Green truck, listening to a Patsy Cline compilation tape, the two of us would warble about our heartache and our man's cheatin' heart, getting nearly drunk on our bottles of sarsaparilla soda. A real man's man, he bought me my first Swiss Army pocket knife and spent the afternoon in his garage, etching my initials into it. He could pass hours out at his bench, smoking pipe tobacco, making all sorts of things with nothing but his tools. When he made 4 matching coat racks, heights corresponding to the heights of my older sister, my 2 younger cousins, and me, I believed I'd never again know such luxury. During one of my many summer breaks spent there, I stared wistfully at cattle farms and cornfields and told my mother that I wanted to live in a town just like Somers when I was older. Tight-lipped, she refused to encourage my statement, but was unwilling to spoil my fantasy too soon. My mom grew up in this tiny town, where women took home economics and men took shop. She had a big personality, so big as to be somewhat indecent. Though she couldn't sing a note on key, she harbored a deep resentment when she wasn't chosen for the school's Christmas choir, heartbroken that she wouldn't have her opportunity to shine in front of her classmates. She was like an artist without a medium, unable to help the fact that her charisma made her the center of attention. She received multiple detentions for disturbing classes, just by asking the wrong questions or making ill-timed jokes. On some occasions, it was nothing more than the way she carried herself. She was nearly suspended when she addressed the teacher by her first name, Judy. "Juday! Juday, Juday!" she exclaimed, with accompanying finger guns. Whether her punishment came because she violated a more literal code of conduct by using a teacher's first name, or because her outburst had too much rhythm, is anyone's guess. Had she stayed in Somers, her future in town would have closely followed the script of some 1950s magazine advertisement. A never-ending cycle of going to work at Friendly's as a Sunday specialist and going home to her unair-conditioned room, crying into her red shag carpet about a college boyfriend that cheated on her, until eventually she would marry, move out of her parents' house, and into her husband's. Somewhere around the age of 22 or 23, she packed up and left with no intention of returning. Her parents made it clear they would offer her no support, financial or emotional. Their prediction was that she would be back within 6 months. They were betting against her. She borrowed $600 from her cousin and aimed for California without a job or a place to live. San Francisco would have been the perfect place for her, one where she walked crisp city streets with oversized sunglasses and where no one would bat an eye at someone feeling eccentric enough to wear a beret and an ascot. My mom must have looked at the Golden Gate Bridge and seen a gateway to her very destiny. I saw it and thought a little bit about death. That's not so surprising considering the iconography of the landmark, but as a teenager I wondered how much thinking was too much. It's not that I was necessarily suicidal, but I was pretty sure that few of my classmates had to reassure themselves that they weren't. I went from being a grimacing adolescent to a grimacing teenager. I sulked, I despaired, I briefly starved myself. I would experience bouts of inescapable discomfort with my life. Playing soccer was almost the only thing that brought me any joy. I wasn't a strong player, and yet I felt there was nothing else I was meant to do in this universe. Soccer season meant grass stains, mud, shorts, and a team-wide loyalty to men's deodorant, even from the pretty girls. At my parents' social events, which I was somehow expected to attend showered and dressed, I felt that I was watching my life from the fourth wall, an outsider who belonged anywhere but in that living room, with groups of parents getting drunk enough to begin a sing-along. I wondered if anyone cared that it was a school night for me. All of my life, there seemed to be a social code I couldn't crack, and with the same rigor of a finishing school curriculum presenting all 25 levels of English peerage, my mom tried to teach me to keep track of divorces, facelifts, and civil forfeitures. But I couldn't understand this world. After my first week of college, I realized that at least part of my misunderstanding had to do with the fact that I was and had all this time been gay. Things clicked into place, my sulking, my misery, my inability to understand my mother's wardrobe requirements, all mostly explained by my repressed sexuality. And then I fell in love, and while I'd always thought of myself as emotionally blunt, snide, sarcastic, and frankly mean, falling in love made me permanently soft. The fall of my junior year, Pop was dying. He hadn't really been well for years, and as a man already prone to watching 5 hours of westerns on television, he slowly became both couch-ridden and couch-like, sagging in his cheeks, his ears, his lower eyelids. He was barely recognizable to us, and we to him. That same fall, I had secretly begun dating my first girlfriend. I felt the weight of this secret as it marked a severe departure from my parents' plans for me. But then again, college-aged kids start keeping all sorts of secrets from their parents. Bad grades, binges, assaults, depressions, girlfriends. It's an awkward time for the impious. When my mom called one morning on her way to visit Pop, she wondered if I would like to join her, and suddenly, surprisingly, I heard myself saying yes. I was living a secret life, an entire love story unfolding unbeknownst to my mom, and yet, while there was still a huge gulf between us, at least I had a better understanding of what made me so different. If we were going to build a bridge, then at least I knew where we were going to begin building. It had been years since the garage was filled with pipe tobacco. Still, it was jarring to drive up that front way and know that my grandfather wasn't inside, was instead at a hospital down the road. I was advised not to visit him because he didn't recognize anyone and said nasty things to people helping him. I decided to go anyway, mostly for my mom's benefit, but also thinking that he might like to know I cared. The moment I walked in the room, he looked straight at me and smiled however widely he could, and with full recognition asked, "What are you doing here?" I wasn't expecting that. His sudden brightness upended plans I had to stay cool. How do you bury someone who suddenly comes to life? I told him, or tried to through tears, that I was there to bust him out. My motorcycle was parked out front and we were going to drive away together. He was a man who loved tall tales, and it seemed to be the only fitting explanation I could give him. And just as I started to believe it myself, the room returned to its reality. In his hospital bed, Pop looked deflated. He had needed to lose weight, but it appeared as if someone had just scooped half of him away, a couch without cushions. He was thirsty, begging for water. The nurse gave him a wet sponge to suck on. It suddenly seemed important to leave at once. I hugged him and choked out my goodbye, hating what that word meant under such circumstances. My mom and I shared her childhood bedroom that weekend in Connecticut. I had my own twin bed in the room across the hall, but it was nice to share this piece of her. Also, Martha the doll sat right outside my room with her beady eyes never blinking. With all the death in the air, I preferred not to walk past her on the way to the bathroom. On my mom's bed, we leafed through her yearbook. And there she was with her big hair and fake tan, looking beloved even in photographs, if that can be possible. Somewhere near the back of the book, a note was scrawled around a senior's headshot. The note from Rita, who bore a strong resemblance to Dorothy from the Golden Girls, started, "Dawn, you dear thing, you." "Oh, Rita," my mom sighed. "She used to pick me up on her scooter. We would ride around town all night. We had a hoot." And then these words. "Oh, I love that big old lesbian." And as a child, I had never met a lesbian. I assumed that my mom hadn't either. At best, my town had a beloved gay hairdresser, Christopher, but everyone knows that's different. I've never owned a hairdryer in my life. My mother was a socialite, world's most gracious host, timeless style, knows exact purpose of each wine glass she owns. I was a tomboy, t-ball champion, tree climber, obsessed with construction. The conflict that occurred between us over my wardrobe, my etiquette, and my demeanor was like a constant silent brooding. The subtext was that she was just waiting for me to grow up, to finally be the daughter she's been shopping for her whole life. She escaped a world where womanhood was synonymous with being meek and subservient, and entered a world where she could live in full color. And when she first arrived in San Francisco, one of her 3 jobs she took in exchange for clothes. She carried herself through the city, broke but well-dressed. Quick in her wake was the shadow of summers. Kids who lived there for life, parents who believed she would fail. The clothing, the niceties, these were her armor, and she was just trying to protect me. But on her bed, looking through a class of 78 yearbook, I saw her briefly as others do. Warm, a friend to all, open-minded, and non-judgmental. I had worried about coming out to her, but hearing that she rode on the back of Rita's scooter, presumably with her arms tightly wrapped around a lesbian, I knew that she was the kind of person who could parent her gay child. We spent the weekend together in her New England town, doing things I always thought were myths of a time gone by. As it turns out, corn mazes are very much a community event. We stopped at an apple farm, which had an apple souvenir shop run out of a barn, and we found the 12 apple cider donuts. And while we barreled through all 12 donuts, I looked at her like there was no better delicacy in all the world, and she looked back at me like she'd always meant to tell me so. That weekend, I caught a glimpse of the girl pointing finger guns and getting in trouble, who was trying to make her way in the world just like I was. My grandpa died, as grandparents do. A week after the funeral, I went home for Thanksgiving. On Wednesday, I came out to my family, and only my sister was surprised. On Thursday, we went to a very typical Marin County Thanksgiving dinner party, but for the first time, I felt like I was in cahoots with my family. We now shared a secret. And when we got home, my mom and I were in her bathroom. She flitted gruffly about until she just stopped and burst into tears. I scooped her up into my arms like there was no gulf between us at all. "I miss my dad," she cried. Her father hadn't really been himself for years, so missing him in that moment didn't make much sense, but death evades logic, and dead parents makes daughters out of all of us. Some connections need a time machine and a moped scooter, because she still doesn't fully understand me as a human. There are times that I come home and my mom has 3 new dresses she would like me to try on. As I step out of my room in a button-down flannel instead, I see her look me up and down before deciding whether it's too late to instill crucial life lessons in me. She'll propose from time to time that I could be the kind of lesbian who wears a skirt, you know? And there's no amount of explanation that I could give that would convince her that skirts go against every fiber of my being, lesbian or not. The universe hands us oddly wrapped gifts. It was precisely in the context of a sad hospital visit that I shared one of the best weekends I've ever spent with my mom. And if I were my mother's classmate, I probably would have called her dear thing. 30 years earlier, she might have even been my friend. Our only real problem was that I was her daughter and she was my mother, and we are to this day 2 people who dared to dream of an elsewhere far from home.
Damn.
Wow. I love that so much.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
I can't believe it's not finished.
I don't know.
It's funny because that part feels so self-contained.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I mean, like I'm sure there's just so much else like you have to say.
There is, but I will say the exercise of like I have 10 minutes to do this. I need to cut out what's not necessary was really, really
the first
good.
time I ever read, I was like, oh shit. So much of what I write is bullshit.
Yeah. And
so wait, you cut out things for the reading?
Yeah, this is half as long as
yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
So we've actually never heard the full thing.
No one has.
I'd love to read it.
But
Mary has.
So you kept that stuff for the for the essay?
Yeah, for like the essay, it lives in my computer. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I will say like this is a fun version of it.
It's very tight, you know.
And that's why it was just fun to read, and it focuses in on my mom a lot, which I love about it. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. Now I'm like, I don't want to kill my babies like no one does, but I'm also.
I just spent a good month doing that.
Yeah. I would be, if this was how it looked, I would be okay with it. I feel like a lot of it is ideas that I have that I can explore at any time.
Well, I think it's a really good idea if you want to turn this into something longer. I think those ideas can definitely be there.
It's like it could either go shorter or longer.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things where if you wanted, you could always publish this as like an essay, standalone, and then like you can write that longer thing.
Yeah.
But one of my favorite aspects, especially like hearing it the second time, is how you give. Whether your mom feels this or not, like, or subconsciously, or, you know, if it's, like, above the threshold of her awareness, like the fact that you give her this, like, analog to your experience. Oh, I was a woman who was too outspoken for my New England town. And then so you have this other experience where I am a woman who's too tomboyish and, like, androgynous, whatever you want to call it, for her taste, you know. But it's the same thing. Her parents... But, like, clearly it seems like she was way more understanding, but maybe it's because she went through that experience.
And can I just say, my grandma was way too outspoken for her family. Yeah, so it just goes back in my lineage. It's just unbelievable.
Everyone there's just, like, a little resistance there, but it's not like animosity. It's, like, more...
No,
you know, you have an idea of who your daughter's going to be. And, you know.
My great-grandparents did not want her to go to college, but they wanted her brother to go to college. So she paid for herself to go to college and was in the first graduating class at Springfield College or something.
And what did your grandparents feel?
My great-grandparents.
Your great.
So this was my grandma being like, I'm going to go to college.
Wow.
And they're like, no, you're not. And she's like, I am. And so she did that and worked her whole life. My mom, they were like, you can't go to culinary school. You can't. And she was like, I'm moving to California. And they're like, no, you're not. And she did. So, like, in that way, my parents are very supportive. They're like, go to New York. You got it. But we're still learning how to talk about gender and stuff like that. I'm going to wear a tie for a wedding. And I was like, my mom was like, it's so hot for a tie. And I was like, what do men do?
What does she really mean?
Yeah,
when it's so hot?
Yeah. I was like, what do men do at weddings? And she was like, well, you're not a man. And I was like, Mom?
Oh my God, my mom does the same thing. She does she says the thing like, no, well, this is why you shouldn't do it. It's like, no, you're telling me because you don't want me to wear a tie. Like that's why you're really telling me.
Yeah. So we still navigate that a lot. I think that she's all good with the lesbian thing. It's like, I think it's the gender thing that she is trying to wrap her head around, which she's doing her best.
Is that why, I mean, like, you know, we asked you before the podcast what personal pronouns that you preferred.
Yeah, that's the first thing I thought of. Yeah, right.
Yeah, you said she, hers. And so is that why you still identify, or are you?
No, I think I do strongly identify as a woman, and like I'm very, very proud to be a woman, and I'm happy to be a woman. It is really interesting. I just went in for a suit fitting, first time wearing a suit coming up, and they used they pronouns, and I was like, I didn't want to be like, Oh, no, I don't use that. So I didn't correct them.
Interesting.
And I should have, because, like, we should all be advocating for the pronouns we prefer. But
that's also kind of cool of them. Because it's not wrong. It's just saying, I'm not ascribing, like, a particular thing to you.
And like, because we were talking about what my style was, he was like, you're into this androgynous, athletic cut and look. And I'm like, that's it. Like, yes. And so I think that he...
You guys are good.
Yeah. I think that he kind of honed in on that.
We're doing finger guns. Call back.
But I don't think I identify with gender neutral pronouns. I definitely identify as a woman, and I feel so much affinity for being a woman. But I'm like just this year starting to like really embrace like the more masculine sides of me as like great.
In general, I agree kind of with what they did, is using a default they when you don't know, when you haven't asked.
Right, yeah, I think that's the right move.
Yeah, I was in a fucking long youth mental health PD today that was like 8 hours long, and it was like mental health 101. I was like, why am I here? But they were still using, even in like as noble as what they were trying to do, they were still using on their like slideshow the S/he.
Right.
And I was like, you could just say they.
Yeah.
And it would be fine. Like, and it would encompass everyone
Totally.
and like what you're trying to do. And so like I actually like I have now used they as a default just in general.
And it subsumes everyone. They inherently subsumes everyone.
Yeah. And it's so interesting. This is like maybe a bit of an aside to that. The ways that like I was like, I'm gonna put on a suit and I'm gonna wear the suit. But I totally in my head was like, I am resigning myself to unfuckability. Like I am resigning myself to not being attractive because
Is that because of this wedding or just in general that's what you want?
No, I think that like I've always hated wearing dresses, and so like, but I always felt like when the time required it that I could never not wear a dress.
And so that must be very uncomfortable for you.
Yeah, well, it's like nice to dress up, but like sometimes when
but wearing a suit's dressing up.
Yeah, and so when I'm wearing things that are like more embracing of that, like you can tell that my swagger is changing. I'm like
Suits are hot.
I'm feeling myself a little bit. But it was so funny because I was like, no, I definitely like I'm just resigning myself to being that eccentric person who wears the suit and like focuses on her writing and her career or whatever. And then I'm dating someone who is like, no, suits are so hot. And I was just like, what?
Yeah.
Like, what? Like, my mind was blown that, like, all these rules that I'm
crazy.
Transgressing from my mom that I can be like...
It just shows you how deeply they're ingrained.
Oh, yeah.
Because to me, it's funny because, like, I have never had that experience, and to me, it's, like, obvious.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, yeah. I mean, we were just watching Dating Around. Have you heard about that,
no.
that show?
What is that?
So it's this
oh
show
my God,
where...
so addicting.
It's really good. We already finished the first season
great,
or whatever it is. I don't know if it's a season, but...
On Netflix.
Basically, one person dates, like, goes on 5 dates at like the same restaurant, and then they go to drinks, and then they pick one person to go with.
Oh, great.
And so there was one with
call back to the era of MTV dating shows.
Exactly, except it's like super classy and like well shot.
Yeah, it looks like it's not reality TV.
Yeah,
it looks, and I would not be surprised to find out that it was all scripted, even though they're trying to sell it as reality TV.
Yeah, I think it's real, but I don't know. It's tough. The conversation sounds real, but then there are these moments where they say
uncomfortable.
They say the same thing to every date, so it's like who knows, and then they cut it up, to see how they react differently. But anyway, so in the episode where it was a gay woman, like, or I'm assuming she was gay. I don't know. She might like men too. There was like a really androgynous woman that she was, or them,
who was by far the hottest person.
Yeah, Katie was really into them.
Yeah,
and like, but yeah, and like, Katie's like, oh yeah, this is the hottest one. Like,
Yeah. Oh, it's deep in there, and I'm unpacking it still, but. We gotta have projects. We gotta have hobbies.
It's also really interesting because you're from near San Fran.
I know that is the worst part.
And but the thing is, you come from this conservative county, so it's like that's what's super strange. Like because someone hears, oh, you're from San Francisco, like this is tough for you. Like I mean, not that it isn't for people in San Francisco, but you do come from a conservative place.
Oh yeah, well, and conservative is so interesting because they're a liberal place, and I'm putting that in quotes. People who can't see that I'm doing this, but like it's a very liberal county, just like Duke is a liberal campus.
Yeah,
and so like conservative means something so different, and that's why I'm like so like drawn to this area because I'm like. Why are you all calling yourself like? Why are we talking about being liberal when like we have so much work to do?
I totally. This is why I've kind of totally detached myself from the idea of liberal and conservative because I grew up in a blue state. I grew up outside of Baltimore, but it was a it was a conservative place.
Right.
It was not a liberal place.
Right.
You know, like this. Honestly,
That's the same as Little Rock. I'm from Little Rock, Arkansas.
Cities are really the only liberal places.
Little Rock's
really
only
are,
the blue district because it's a city, and like the surrounding all of Arkansas is red. But like in general, in Little Rock, I mean, there are so many conservative like viewpoints that I was just like, I felt suffocated.
Yeah. Or like just like not necessarily like, oh, if it came to voting, maybe like I would definitely vote liberal. But if you're gossiping about someone who looks like you can't place their gender, that is a conservative value.
Yeah.
Like,
forget about androgyny, they, them, and like Little Rock. Yeah. Like, I mean, like I'm, you know, my Little Rock friends might get pissed off about this, but it's true.
Mm-hmm. I mean, to me, more than anything, honestly, it just blows up the idea of being a liberal or a conservative. Yeah. You know what I mean? That to me, more than anything, it's like the reason cities are so much more liberal is because we are all packed in together and we have to learn to live with each other. And it makes everything better, honestly. Yeah. That's why I identify, I'm now doing quotes, like, you know, as a liberal, but like we all have certain conservative values. Yeah. Like it's like there's certain things that we're more like, you know, a little drawn into ourselves about, you know?
Yep.
So I don't know. Yeah, that's a really interesting thing though. Yeah, because totally. There's a lot of things you have in your life that I relate to. I'm just not gay.
No, that's cool.
That's like, you know what I mean? Like I just have never had that experience.
But I would imagine that you are slightly more emotionally sensitive than most men.
I very 100%.
Much so that might be your coming out of the closet moment.
Yeah, I guess.
You're like, I have feelings.
I've known that though.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying that like just growing up with people in conservative that we're talking about that in that way, like men aren't allowed to have emotions.
Right,
like, so
right.
That makes you unique.
Yep, it's very true.
That makes you transgress some of the social order.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, I'm just lucky enough that I think the culture of my friends growing up was like that. Yeah. We were all, I mean, don't get me wrong, growing up in the early 2000s, it's like we're still using gay as like a like, you know, it's like the you know, not to bring up Louis C.K., you know, whatever we feel about him, but like
leave him out of this.
The faggot joke, right? It's like, unfortunately back then that's what people said, and it's thank God we don't anymore, but like that's like kind of like a, you could say like a not very liberal thing to say, but you know, but none of us had a problem with gay people,
right? Like know? What you're saying too. My group of friends was so cool with me being like this like sexless androgynous person. Like no one was waiting for. No one was like, why don't you have a? None of my high school friends were wondering why I didn't have a boyfriend. They were just like, you're just who you are. And then it wasn't until I went out into this like uber elite world of being at Duke where I was like, why don't I have a boyfriend? Questions.
When was it? Do you remember like what year?
When I came out?
Or like when you realized more? Like, you know?
First week of college, I was like,
wow,
here it is. And
so
then
what was it about college?
I think that I probably was like, I'll meet a boy in college. And then I got to college and I was like, I don't want to date any of you. And so then I was like,
man, that's so crazy.
Within the first week, just like crashing, like true, this is what's happening. I'm gonna explore it. I know this is true now.
As a psychology major, I feel like, you know, I don't know if you guys know, but like one of the gold standards for like comparisons is comparing twins that have been separated or twins that have stayed together. Like, you know, twins, because then you can see like genetics are the same, right? And then like you see like this like together and apart. I feel like in terms of repression, there can be there's so much to mine between like gay people and straight people. You know what I mean? Like if you could just like somehow like if you had twins that were gay or something, like or like one wasn't. I don't know. I'm just spitballing.
I will say, like to Katie's point, like people experience repression for all sorts of things.
So and that's what I'm saying. It's like, but there's such a desire, I feel like, somewhat to like come out. You know, because like how like it's like, okay, so let's say someone represses the fact that they like a video game, like that they're not supposed to, like, whatever. There's not this like, oh my god, this like doom that builds, right? It's like, but like being gay is like, I want to live the way I want to live. Like sex is a huge part of people's lives, right? Like, you know, so that's why I feel like could be, I don't know.
It's so interesting because I've been thinking about this a lot now that I'm hopefully getting a job or going to be working in advocacy, because when I was coming out, I was like so devastated. I really didn't want to do it, did not want to deal with this hurdle because I just didn't see any sort of like, oh, I want to have sex with someone. I didn't think about that at all. My friend made me make a list of the reasons why I wanted to come out and why it was important. And the first two items are like, I want to be a role model for other people who need to come out, and I want to help other people make this easier for them because it's so hard for me. Bottom of my list was that I want to be happy. Like, that's a backwards list.
Yeah.
Like, my happiness should have come first. Like, I mean, yes, it's admirable that my intention was that I wanted to do it for other people, but that means that I lived the world where, like, my gayness was in service of other people, which is not good. So I'm, like, trying very hard to authentically flip that script a little bit and be like, this is about my happiness, and then I can help others. Like, affix your safety mask to your face first.
Yeah, right.
But it's so interesting because I definitely have, I mean, I have so much more to say about this, and I know we can't keep it going, but, like, I have so many thoughts about the way that I've made my gayness, or that's not even a term, sorry, everyone, but
I've heard it.
like, work for other people, or, like, in the service of the world, where then I feel like, oh, I need to be the right kind of gay, or I need to, like, hold myself a certain standard. I can't transgress gender too much because then people will be like, watch your gay, you know, like, watch it. But it's clearly I can now rethink and be like, this has been in the back of my mind the entire time that I've been an out woman, is that I've been carefully towing the line of, like, I'll be gay, but, like, you won't even notice. Like, you won't even notice me. Don't worry. I'll be quiet over here.
Oh my God. I have, like, everything that you're saying right now. I've felt 100%. I mean, like, I am a person who feels very fluid in my sexuality with a male partner. And so, like, I keep it very closed mouth because of that. Because I'm just like, okay, well, like, right now I am, like, whatever I am masquerading, like, as a straight person with a male partner, and like, I don't know what you just said, like, it resonates very fully with me.
And I think that we should all, like, I don't know, try to be thoughtful about fluidity. Like, not saying that you need to explore, but I'm just saying, like, I think that we I'm definitely not saying that.
No, actually, no. I mean, honestly, I think you. I don't think. I think you should.
Yeah, I'm just
because I mean, like, I'll tell you right now, I don't really have barriers about it. Like, I have thought about it, and like, no, I know what you're saying. I don't think that should be taboo.
No, yeah, and I'm not trying.
You know
to
what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think it should. The whole point, I think, is that it shouldn't feel like it's being forced upon you. It should.
That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because, like, the only reason it would feel that way is if we still have stigmas about certain ways to live.
Right.
You know?
And so if it would only feel that way if we placed so much more value on being heterosexual.
Yes,
so, like,
exactly.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Exactly, is, like, which is a knee-jerk reaction in society still.
Yeah.
You know what's funny? It's like when we watched movies and TV, a lot of the time when parents hear their kids come out on, like, a TV show or a movie, like, so much you hear, oh, no, I'm just upset because it's going to be so hard for them.
Yeah.
You know,
while that was my parents was like, are you safe?
Yeah, and I think there's truth to that.
Yeah,
but at the same time, I do think that that's a smokescreen sometimes for, I'm actually still upset about this, because you're ingrained to feel upset about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and we live in a fear culture, and we live in a culture that we're all too safe a little bit in a way, like even being artists is really hard because people are like, what are you doing? And I feel like there are so many parallels I draw between being gay and being an artist that, like, they feel the same to me, because they're both
hiding something
or outside of the norm, or they're not part of this, like, profit-making endeavor. So
capitalism does not value us at all.
No, and it's so interesting how, like, the bravery to be gay is, like, to me, the same bravery that it takes to write.
No, that's really interesting.
Yeah. What you just said, Brian, that, you know, life's just going to be so hard for them. Growing up, most people thought that my younger brother was gay, and, like, he's totally straight.
Probably because he's so gorgeous.
He's like a...
He's an actor.
If you imagine the 6 foot tall, blonde haired, crystal blue eyed version of me, that's my brother.
Stop right there.
And he's a little movie star now. He's out in LA, like literally making movies. But
and he looks like Katie, so I'm like, if I'm gonna find out if I have any gay tendencies, like,
it's Roy, my brother, Roy Rainey. But, like, most of my family at some point questioned whether or not he was gay, and they often questioned whether or not he was gay to me. Yeah. And I was like, oh, that's the sibling you should be asking about. Right. And I've actually never come out to my family, so if they listen to this. Like,
surprise.
I said that last night on the podcast, or last episode on the podcast with Chris. I was like, well, shit, we're talking about all this. Like, if,
she's in good hands.
Yeah. I was like, well, I've never actually said that to any of my family, because I've never brought home a partner who wasn't male, because I knew what I was dealing with.
Right.
So that's I don't know, just like that whole, like, and they said that exact thing to me, like, I just worry about, you know, how he'll live.
Yep.
Right.
Is what they said about Roy. And
because it's the thing that hedges against both of them. Mm-hmm. It's like, I am upset, but I don't have to say I'm upset that you're gay. I can only say I can say I'm upset because you're gay. Like, you know.
And then you're like, of course I'm gonna move to New York and it's gonna be fine. And they're like, New York, the big city. Like, you can just like the unraveling of living this like hedonistic lifestyle in New York is so interesting.
Oh yeah.
I
am the poster child.
Far
for that.
more hedonistic in every other country I've lived in than in New York. New York, I feel like I'm my most like
tame
and like
that's awesome
lived self.
So
we are coming to a close.
Yeah, let's.
Guys,
but
I just so fun.
I just want to ask you real quick is like, what else are you working on right now?
I don't know. I'm in a transition period.
we're doing this on the air?
Yeah, I don't know.
Did the whole job thing, and that was very distracting. And I'm like, sometimes you finish something and you're like, I'll never do anything that good again. So I have some ideas. One of the things I really want to work on is I think a lot about loneliness. I had this experience where I first got here and I was like accepting that I was an introvert, and I got to New York and I was like, this is amazing. I can just be anonymous. And then I accidentally stumbled upon a sex-themed burlesque show.
Oh my God, love it.
Yeah, and it was like, I'm very uncomfortable with sex, like in a public way. I'm fine with partners, but...
You are from the South,
yeah.
Me too. Amen.
Well, she's from San Francisco.
I understand.
But like, it might as well be the South.
Yeah.
Part of it was like, the host arrives and she's like, you guys ready to get sexy? And I was just like, oh God, no, like what has happened? And then she was like, okay, I want you to find a stranger in the audience and make 90 seconds of eye contact. And I was like, no! And I actually, like... as soon as I looked into her eyes, I realized that I was gonna like start crying because I was like, intimacy. Like I was like accepting this introversion in me and feeling good as a lone ranger, but then it was like, oh, like you're a little lonely because like that intimacy really triggered something in you. You missed that. And so just like, and if you've read Lonely City by Olivia Lang, and
no,
I have not. No.
Yeah, there's just some thoughts about, I don't know, like opening windows to look out and opening windows to look in, and whether you're making eye contact in a direct way. I don't know. I'm going to sit in that one for a while. But
interesting.
Okay. I like it.
Yeah,
I want to read it.
Don't put that pressure on me.
I want to read it. I'm saying it on the air. I want to read it.
Manifesting it. The work.
Annie, thank you so much for this conversation.
Yeah.
It's been awesome.
Thank you guys for having me. This was the highlight of my week.
That's wow. More than getting the job.
Yeah, as soon as I said it, I was like,
That's okay.
That's fine. We're about
you got the
here.
job. It's
we
fine.
don't want you to press anything.
This is fun, but you got a really awesome job. So.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, that's it for today's episode. If you like what you heard, please subscribe and review on whichever platform you're listening. You can get in touch with us on Twitter at Animal Riot Press, or Facebook and Instagram at the same name, or through our website, animalriotpress.com. This has been the 12th episode of the Animal Riot Podcast with your host, Brian Birnbaum, and featuring Annie Krabbenschmidt. Transcripts for our deaf and hard of hearing animals are provided by Jonathan Kay, and we are produced by me, Katie Rainey. See you later, you filthy animals.
It's the burn, bombing on y'all and getting gully as the fern.